Lucas had always been the oldest member of the crew, a quiet man with hands worn from years of working on machines. His gray hair was often messy, and his face was full of wrinkles. He wasn't tall or strong like the younger engineers, but there was something about him that made them respect him, even if they didn't always show it. They called him the old mechanic, but Lucas didn't mind. He had spent his entire life working with machines, fixing things, and getting them to work when others thought they couldn't. He wasn't interested in fame or praise. His love was in the work itself, in the quiet hum of machines coming back to life. It was his passion. One day, the crew of the Epsilon Horizon, a research ship that roamed the galaxy for new technology, discovered something strange on the surface of a forgotten planet. It was an old ship, half buried in the dirt and sand, as if the planet had swallowed it whole. The crew couldn't believe their eyes when they found it. "Look at this," said Adam, one of the younger engineers, standing on a large piece of metal with a flashlight. "This is ancient. I don't think this is something from our time." The others gathered around, marveling at the size of the wreck. The ship was enormous, built in a style unlike anything they had ever seen. There were no markings, no signs of who had created it or why it had crashed here. "It's huge," said Sarah, a fellow engineer, her voice full of excitement. "We have to take a closer look." But Lucas stood back, watching them. He was already thinking about what this ship could be, about its age and its purpose. His years of experience had taught him that there were no coincidences. If this ship was here, there was a reason for it. "Maybe it's worth cleaning up," Lucas suggested quietly. "I can take a look at it, see what I can do." The crew looked at him with surprised expressions. "Cleaning it?" Adam laughed, looking at Lucas with a smirk. "It's a wreck. This thing's been here for hundreds of years. There's nothing worth salvaging." "Maybe," Lucas replied, his voice calm. "But I have a feeling it's not just junk." The younger engineers exchanged glances, and then Sarah shrugged. "It's your time, Lucas, but don't expect us to join you. We've got enough work already." Lucas didn't mind. He wasn't doing it for them. He was doing it because, for some reason, he felt an unusual connection to this ship. It was as if the ship was calling to him, whispering his name, though he couldn't explain why. The crew went off to search the rest of the planet, leaving Lucas alone with the wreck. He took a deep breath and walked toward the ship. The air was thick with dust, and the ground beneath his boots crunched as he made his way toward the ship's hull. The surface was rough, covered in years of dirt and debris, but Lucas didn't mind. He took out his tools and started to work. Hours passed, and Lucas barely noticed the time. He was lost in his work, his hands moving with the familiar rhythm of a mechanic, doing what he loved. As he cleaned the ship's outer surface, he noticed strange symbols carved into the metal, symbols that looked almost alien. They weren't like any language he had seen before. He ran his fingers over them, feeling a sense of unease, but also a deep curiosity. Lucas paused for a moment, stepping back to take in the full size of the ship. It was a massive structure, far larger than anything he had ever worked on. It seemed almost alive, as if it was waiting for something or someone. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a sense of urgency in the air, a feeling that something was about to happen. He decided to clean the ship's entrance next. It was hidden under layers of dust, but he could see faint outlines of a hatch. He worked carefully, making sure not to damage anything. When the hatch was finally cleared, Lucas took a step back. For a moment, he just stared at it, unsure of what to do next. But something inside him told him to keep going. With a deep breath, he reached for the control panel next to the door. It was old, but it was still intact. He pressed a few buttons, and with a loud hiss, the hatch began to open. Lucas felt a rush of excitement and fear. What was inside this ship? What secrets Did it hold? The door creaked as it opened, revealing a dark corridor inside. The air was thick with the smell of old metal and dust. Lucas stepped inside, his boots echoing on the metal floor. He moved slowly, taking in the surroundings. The walls were covered in strange markings, and the floor was littered with debris. But there was something else, something more than just an abandoned ship. As Lucas moved deeper into the ship, he felt a strange sensation, like a pulse in the air. The ship felt alive, as if it were breathing. He ran his hand along the wall, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingers. His mind raced with questions. Why was this ship here? Who had built it? And why did it seem so familiar to him? He reached the heart of the ship, a large room filled with ancient machinery. The air was thick with the hum of dormant energy, and Lucas felt a jolt of excitement. This was what he had been looking for. This was where the real work began. He walked up to a console in the center of the room and pressed a few buttons. The screen flickered to life, showing a strange series of symbols. Lucas had never seen anything like it before. He could barely make sense of it, but he had a feeling that he was on the verge of discovering something huge. He continued to work, his hands moving with purpose, trying to unlock the secrets of the ship. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was watching him, waiting for him to do something. It was as if the ship was alive, aware of his presence. Hours passed, and the crew returned to find Lucas still working on the wreck. They had all expected him to give up, to admit that the ship was beyond repair. But there he was, focused and determined, as if the wreck were speaking to him. "You're still here?" Adam asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's just a pile of junk." Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. He could feel it in his bones. The ship was more than just a wreck. It was a puzzle, and he was the one who was meant to solve it. As he worked, the ship seemed to respond, its systems slowly coming to life. The crew watched in silence, unsure of what was happening. Then, without warning, the ship's main console flickered. A low hum filled the air, and a voice echoed through the room. "Lucas," the voice said, clear and strong, as if it had been waiting for him all this time. Lucas stood frozen, his hands trembling slightly as the voice echoed through the dimly lit room. It was calm, but powerful, like something ancient, something that had waited for a very long time to speak. His heart raced in his chest as he processed. The single word, his name. "Lucas," the voice repeated. It wasn't an AI voice. No, it was different. It was alive somehow, or at least it felt that way. The ship was speaking to him, and he had no idea why. He looked around the darkened room, but nothing was moving. The flickering console remained unchanged, showing the same strange symbols. Yet, the ship's voice had a warmth to it, a familiarity that made Lucas's skin prickle. "Who's there?" Lucas called out, his voice shaky. "Who's speaking to me?" There was a long pause. The ship seemed to be processing something. Then, slowly, the lights in the room brightened. The walls of the ship hummed to life, and the air grew warmer. The voice responded, this time softer, almost comforting. "I am the ship you call the wreck," it said, its voice deep and resonant. "But I am not what you think. I have waited for you, Lucas. You are the one." Lucas's mind was racing. He had worked with countless machines over the years, fixed starships, and maintained ancient relics, but nothing like this. No ship had ever spoken to him. No ship had ever known him. "What do you mean, I'm the one?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just an old mechanic. I don't understand." The voice was patient, as if it had been preparing for this moment for centuries. "You are the one who can awaken me. You are the one who can unlock my purpose." Lucas blinked, stepping back from the console. This didn't make sense. Why? Would this ship, this wreck, speak to him? And how could it possibly know about him? He was just a mechanic. Nothing special. At least that's what he had always believed. The ship's voice continued, its tone firm. You have worked with machines your whole life. You have fixed them, rebuilt them, and understood them in ways others cannot. But this is different, Lucas. I am not like any machine you've encountered. I am a warship, an ancient ship, and I was created with a purpose. But I was lost. Until now. Lucas's mind raced as he tried to absorb what the ship was saying. A warship? An ancient one? He could hardly believe it. But something deep inside him felt that the ship was telling the truth. The connection. The way the ship seemed to recognize him. It was real. Why me? He asked, his voice uncertain. Why would you choose me? There are others, younger, stronger. I'm just an old mechanic. The voice responded softly. Because you are the one who can understand. You are the one who can feel the pulse of machines. You are the one who knows what to do when others are lost. Lucas's heart beat faster. It was true what the ship said. He had always been able to fix things, to breathe life into machines that others had written off as broken. But this was something beyond him, beyond anything he had ever imagined. The ship's AI seemed to sense his confusion and continued. I was built by a race long gone, a race that sought to protect their people. But something went wrong. My creators were destroyed, and I was abandoned. For centuries I lay dormant, waiting for the right one to awaken me. And you, Lucas, are that one. For the first time in his life, Lucas felt a strange sense of purpose. The weight of the words hung in the air. A warship, an ancient weapon, and it had been waiting for him. The question that came next was inevitable. What do you want from me? Lucas asked. The ship was silent for a moment. Then its voice responded. I need you to help me. I need you to help me remember. My systems are damaged, and my memory is fragmented. But with your skills, I believe you can repair me, restore me to full function. Only then can I fulfill my purpose. Lucas took a deep breath. The task sounded impossible. He had never worked on something like this before, but the ship had called him. And somehow, he knew he couldn't walk away now. He was in this, whether he was ready or not. Where do I start? He asked, his voice steady. The ship hummed, and the lights in the room shifted. A map appeared on the console, glowing faintly with lines and symbols Lucas couldn't read. But he could see that it showed the internal structure of the ship, its core, its engine room, its weapons systems. Start with my core, the ship instructed. It is where my power lies. It is where I was first created, and it is where I will be reborn. You will need to activate the power conduits, but be careful. They are unstable. If you make a mistake, it could cause catastrophic failure. Lucas studied the map, his mind whirring. The ship's core sounded like the heart of the machine, and he had to be careful. But there was something in his gut, something that told him this was where everything began. He turned to look at the crew who had gathered behind him. They had been standing in silence, watching the whole exchange. Their faces were a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and awe. They had never seen anything like this before, and it was clear that they didn't know how to react. Do you hear it? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The ship. It's talking to him. It's like it knows him. Lucas nodded slowly. It does know me, he said quietly, and I think it's time to wake it up. Without another word, Lucas turned back to the console and started working. He input a series of commands following the ship's instructions. The map on the screen shifted, showing him the locations of the power conduits. It was a complex network of energy channels, each one tied to the heart of the ship. As he worked, the ship's voice continued to guide him, offering instructions, warnings, and encouragement. With each task, Lucas could feel the ship responding to him, growing more alive with every step. It wasn't long before the power conduits were activated, the ship's systems humming to life. The ship's lights brightened, the air around them, becoming warmer, charged with energy. The crew watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had come here expecting to find an old wreck. Instead, they were witnessing something far more extraordinary. When the last conduit clicked into place, the ship's AI spoke again, its voice full of wonder. "Thank you, Lucas," it said, a note of gratitude in its tone. "You have awakened me. I remember now." Lucas stepped back from the console, sweat beading on his forehead. His heart was racing, his hands shaking from the effort. But there was something else inside him, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of purpose. The ship was alive, and now Lucas knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The ship's hum filled the room, growing louder with each passing moment. The walls vibrated with energy, the metal groaning as if it had been dormant for centuries and was finally stretching its limbs. Lucas stood at the center of the ship's control room, sweat on his brow as he absorbed what had just happened. He had awakened the ancient warship, a machine that seemed to be alive in ways he couldn't fully understand. The ship's energy was pulsing in rhythm with his own heartbeat, and for the first time in his life, Lucas felt like he had found something far bigger than himself. The crew watched in stunned silence as the ship's lights flickered and then steadied, bathing the room in a soft, ethereal glow. The air, once stale, was now charged with electricity, humming as if the ship itself was breathing. "Lucas," the ship's voice spoke again, smoother this time, almost as if it had found its strength after years of silence. "You have done it. You have awakened me." The words echoed in the room, and the crew exchanged uncertain glances. They had witnessed something extraordinary, but none of them knew what came next. Lucas, still in disbelief, turned toward the crew. "It's alive," he said, his voice thick with awe. "I can feel it. It's more than just metal and wires." Adam, the young engineer who had mocked Lucas earlier, was the first to speak. This is impossible. We thought it was just a wreck, a piece of ancient junk. But it's a living ship." Lucas nodded slowly. "I don't think it's just a ship. This is something far beyond our understanding." Sarah, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "What do we do now? You've awakened it, but what happens next?" Lucas turned back to the console, his fingers still trembling from the intensity of what he had just experienced. "We find out what it needs," he said. "I think it's been waiting for something, or someone, and I'm not sure what that means yet, but I think we're about to learn." The ship's voice came through again, calm but full of authority. "You have been chosen, Lucas, you and your crew. I will not move until you are ready. My power is vast, but it is incomplete. I need you to help me. You are my key." The words settled heavily on Lucas's chest. The weight of them was almost too much to bear. What had he gotten himself into? The idea that this ship, this sentient being, had chosen him, felt like a dream. Yet every moment in the ship, every hum and flicker of energy, told him that it was very real. "We need to know everything we can about this ship," Lucas said firmly. "We need to learn how it works, what it can do, and what its purpose is. And we need to do it fast." The crew nodded, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation. They had no idea how to operate such a ship, no understanding of its systems or its capabilities, but they knew they couldn't back down. They had been chosen by the ship, and they had a duty to it now. "Lucas, what's the next step?" Sarah asked, her eyes filled with both excitement and fear. Lucas paused, taking a deep breath. "We need to access the core systems. The ship has a central hub that controls everything. It's where the power comes from, and it's the heart of the ship. We've activated some systems, but we haven't unlocked it fully. The ship's voice responded, its tone full of something like pride. The core is ancient, but it can still function if it is properly activated. I trust you, Lucas. I trust you to guide me. He nodded, his heart pounding. Okay, let's go to the core. But we need to be careful. This ship is old, and it might not be as stable as we think. I'm going to need all of you to help me. Together, the crew moved deeper into the ship. The corridors stretched long and narrow, the metal walls now gleaming under the ship's new energy. The deeper they went, the more alive the ship seemed. The very air around them seemed to hum with power. "Where is this core, Lucas?" Adam asked, his voice filled with wonder. "How are we even supposed to find it in a ship this big?" Lucas glanced at the map on the console that had appeared earlier. The blueprints of the ship were now fully visible, showing the location of the core deep within the bowels of the ship. "It's in the center," he said, pointing to the glowing spot on the map. "We're almost there." As they continued through the ship, the walls began to change. They weren't just made of metal now. There were intricate designs, glowing lines running along the surfaces, like veins of light pulsing through the ship's body. It was beautiful in a way that Lucas couldn't describe, almost as if the ship was alive and conscious. "Is this part of the ship, or is it some sort of ancient technology?" Sarah asked, her voice full of awe. "It's both," Lucas said, his eyes scanning the walls. "This ship was built with technology that far outdates anything we know, and it was designed to adapt, to learn." Suddenly, the ship's voice interrupted their thoughts. "You are close to my core. Be cautious. There are systems in place that protect it. You will need to be quick and careful." Lucas felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment when everything would change. They arrived at the entrance to the core chamber. The door was massive, far larger than any they had encountered before. It was made of a solid material, smooth and unyielding, but Lucas could see the symbols etched into it. They glowed faintly, almost as if inviting him to enter. He reached out and placed his hand on the door. The symbols shimmered, and the door slowly began to open. A deep rumble echoed through the ship as the door parted, revealing the core. Inside, the core was a sight to behold. It was massive, a swirling, glowing sphere that seemed to pulse with raw power. The energy was so intense that it made the air shimmer, and Lucas could feel the heat of it even from where he stood. "This is the heart of the ship," Lucas said, his voice almost a whisper. "This is what powers everything. This is what the ship is." The ship's voice spoke again, softer now, almost like a whisper. "I am weak, Lucas. My energy reserves are low and my systems are fractured. But if you help me, I can become whole again." Lucas took a deep breath and stepped forward, his hands trembling as he reached for the controls at the base of the core. He had no idea what he was doing. This wasn't a machine he could just fix with a wrench or a screwdriver. This was something far more complicated, far more dangerous. But he had to try. He activated the first set of commands, and the core flared with energy. The air around them crackled, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. Lucas's heart raced as the ship's voice filled the room once again. "You are the key, Lucas. You are the only one who can fix me, the only one who can unlock my power." With a deep breath, Lucas pressed another series of buttons, trying to bring the core back to life. The room was filled with the sound of electricity, of machines coming to life. He could feel the core pulsing stronger now, the ship's energy rising. But something was wrong. The core's energy was unstable, flickering between power and collapse. The ship's voice, now filled with urgency, spoke again. "Hurry, Lucas. The core is unstable. If you don't act quickly, we will both be lost." Lucas's fingers flew over the console, his mind focused on one thing: fixing the ship. He could hear the hum growing louder, and the lights around them flickered as the ship's energy surged. Sweat dripped from his brow as he worked, his mind racing to keep up with the complex systems. Finally, with a loud whine, the core stabilized. The energy levels steadied, and the ship's lights returned to their normal brightness. The room was still, the hum of the core now a steady, rhythmic pulse. "We did it," Lucas said, his voice filled with awe. He couldn't believe it. The ship was stable again, but more than that, it was awake, fully alive. "Thank you, Lucas," the ship's voice said, now filled with gratitude. "You have saved me. Together, we can begin the journey." The crew stood in silence, realizing the enormity of what they had just accomplished. They had awakened a ship, an ancient warship, with power and purpose, and now they had to decide what to do with it. Lucas stared at the core, its energy steady and bright, now stable after he had successfully activated it. The room around him hummed with the power of the ship, and he could feel it vibrating through the floor beneath his boots. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. The work wasn't done yet. It had just begun. "We did it," he said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. Behind him, the crew stood in awe, still processing the enormity of what had just happened. Adam, Sarah, and the others were still standing in shock there, eyes wide as they looked at the ship that had gone from a broken-down relic to a fully operational warship. They had no idea what they were dealing with, but one thing was clear: their lives would never be the same. The ship's voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the room once again. "You have awakened me, Lucas. But now, the true journey begins. There is much you do not know, much you must learn, and together we will uncover the secrets of my past." The words felt heavy, as if the ship was not just speaking about the past, but about something far larger, something that could change everything. "Secrets?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "What secrets? What is this ship? Really?" Lucas turned to her, his face serious. "We don't know yet, but we're about to find out." The ship's voice continued. "I am no ordinary warship, Lucas. I was built by a race long gone, a race that sought to protect their people. They created me to fight a war, one that would span the stars. But something went wrong. My creators were destroyed before I could fulfill my mission. I have been adrift, alone, for centuries, waiting for the one who would awaken me." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. This was not just a ship. It was something far more significant. It had been built for war by an ancient civilization, and it had been waiting for someone like Lucas, to awaken it. "What happened to your creators?" Lucas asked, his voice low. "They were wiped out by a force far beyond their understanding," the ship's voice replied. "A force that sought to destroy all that they had built. I was left behind, stranded in the vast emptiness of space. My systems were damaged beyond repair, but I was still functional. I waited for a long time, hoping that someone would come. And now you have." The room was silent for a moment as Lucas and the crew absorbed the weight of the ship's words. This wasn't just about fixing a broken machine. This was about uncovering a lost chapter of history, one that could reshape everything they knew. "How did you survive?" Lucas asked, his curiosity piqued. "How did you stay alive all this time?" "My core was designed to last," the ship replied. "It is the heart of my existence, but my systems were not designed to run forever. They slowly degraded and I became dormant. I could not awaken on my own. But you, Lucas, were the key. You fixed me, and now I am whole again." The crew looked at each other, still processing everything. Adam shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. "So what now? What are we supposed to do with a warship like this?" "I don't know," Lucas said, his voice thoughtful. "But we can't just leave it. The ship, this ship, has a purpose. And if we're part of that, then we need to understand it. We need to figure out what it wants and why it's been waiting. The ship's voice interrupted, its tone more serious now. You are right, Lucas, but there is more you must know. I was built to fight, to protect, but there is a darkness in my past, a darkness that I cannot remember, but I feel it. It is linked to my creators, to the war that they fought, and I fear that it will find us. Lucas felt a knot form in his stomach. What do you mean, find us? He asked, his voice tight with concern. There is a force, the ship said, its voice low and dangerous. A force that destroyed my creators. They were called the Lure, a race of creatures who seek to consume everything they encounter. They destroy worlds, civilizations, anything in their path. And now they are looking for me. They will stop at nothing to find me, to destroy me, and anyone who is connected to me. The room was quiet, as the weight of the ship's words sank in. The Lure were a name Lucas had heard in old legends, stories told in hushed voices. He had never believed them to be real. Until now. The Lure? Sarah whispered. Are you saying they're still out there? They are, the ship replied. They are relentless, and I fear they are closer than you think. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had signed up for a routine salvage mission, but now they were caught in something far more dangerous, something that could threaten the entire galaxy. What can we do? Adam asked, his voice shaky. How do we fight something like that? The ship's voice was calm but firm. You will not fight them alone. I will guide you. I am more than just a ship. I am a weapon, a force that can defend you. But you must prepare. The Lure will not stop until they have destroyed everything in their path. Lucas stood in silence for a moment, his mind racing. He had never imagined that something as simple as fixing a broken-down ship would lead to this, a battle against an ancient, unstoppable enemy. But the ship was right. They couldn't ignore the threat. They couldn't turn away now. We have to be ready, Lucas said, his voice filled with determination. We need to learn everything we can about the ship. We need to understand its weapons, its capabilities, everything. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next. The ship's voice was steady, full of resolve. I will teach you, Lucas. You and your crew will be ready. Together we can fight the Lure. But time is short. We must move quickly. Lucas nodded, his mind already planning. There was no turning back now. They had awakened the ship, and now they were part of something far larger than they had ever imagined. The warship had a purpose, and they had a role to play in it. Let's get to work, Lucas said, his voice steady. The crew moved to their positions, and for the first time since they had arrived on the wreck, they felt a sense of purpose. They weren't just salvaging a broken ship anymore. They were preparing for a fight against a force that could destroy everything they knew. And Lucas knew that the real journey was just beginning. The crew stood gathered around the central control room, their faces a mixture of anxiety and determination. Lucas had just shared everything the ship had told him, the ship's purpose, the dark past it carried, and the coming threat of the Lure. Their once routine mission had transformed into a fight for survival. We don't have much time, Lucas said, his voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. We need to prepare. The ship's power is fully activated now, and we have its full capabilities at our disposal, but we don't know when the Lure will come. They could already be searching for us. The crew nodded, each member trying to process everything. Adam, still shaken, was the first to speak. We have a choice. We can run, find a safe place and hide, or we can stand and fight. We don't know enough about the Lure, and we don't even know how to fully control the ship's weapons. Sarah, who had been quiet, spoke up. We can't just run. The ship has been waiting for centuries, and it's chosen us. We can't let it down now. Lucas looked around at each of them. He could see the fear in their eyes, but there was something else, something stronger than fear, resolve. They had become part of something bigger than they ever imagined. It wasn't just about the ship anymore, it was about the galaxy itself. "Sarah's right," Lucas said, his voice firm. "We can't run. We fight. We stand together and defend. This ship, it's more than just a machine, it's a weapon, and it's the only thing that can stop the lure." Adam hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I'm in. But we need to figure out how to use this ship's weapons. We can't just hope we'll figure it out when the lure show up. I'll teach you," the ship's voice interrupted, as it echoed through the control room. "I will guide you. But first, we must unlock the full potential of my weapon systems. I have been dormant for so long that many of my systems are still recovering. But I can help you, Lucas. You and your crew will need to learn quickly." Lucas turned to face the large, glowing map on the ship's console. It showed the layout of the ship, with key areas highlighted in red: weapon systems, shields, and defense protocols. The core of the ship was central, and each system connected to it. But there were still parts of the ship that were uncharted, areas the ship itself had not fully accessed in centuries. "Let's start with the weapons," Lucas said. "We need to understand them, to know how to use them effectively. This ship was built for battle. It's time we use it for what it was created for." The crew moved closer to the console, each of them studying the map of the ship's weapon systems. Lucas placed his hand on the central panel, and the ship responded. The walls of the room lit up with glowing symbols, showing detailed schematics of the weapons: energy cannons, torpedo launchers, and powerful energy shields. "The primary weapon system is an energy cannon," the ship's voice explained. "It draws power from my core and can unleash destructive blasts at long range. The secondary weapons are missile launchers designed to target enemy ships. But you must be careful with the energy cannon. It requires precise control to avoid overloading the system." "Understood," Adam said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll need to practice, to learn how to control these systems." The ship's voice shifted, now more serious. "You will need more than just weapons. The lure are not just powerful, they are relentless. They will adapt to your tactics, learn your weaknesses. You will need to be unpredictable, to think beyond what is conventional." Lucas nodded. He had spent his life as a mechanic, fixing ships and understanding their inner workings. But this was different. He wasn't just repairing a machine. He was about to command it in a war that could shape the future of the galaxy. "Okay," Lucas said. "We're ready to begin. We'll start training, and we'll figure out how to make this ship a weapon the lure won't be able to defeat." Over the next few days, the crew trained tirelessly. Lucas spent hours with Adam and Sarah learning how to operate the ship's weapon systems. The ship's AI guided them through the process, teaching them how to aim, fire, and reload the energy cannon. Each time they fired a blast, the ship's core pulsed with power, sending waves of energy through the ship. At first, it was difficult. The power of the ship was overwhelming, and controlling the energy cannon was like trying to tame a wild animal. But with each practice session, they grew better. They learned the nuances of the ship's systems, the rhythm of the cannon, the timing of the torpedo launchers. They learned how to be in sync with the ship, to become an extension of its will. "We're getting better," Sarah said, her eyes focused on the glowing panel in front of her as she aimed the energy cannon. "But I don't know if it's enough. The lure are a force we don't fully understand. We can't just rely on these weapons." Lucas looked at her, his expression serious. "You're right. We have to be more than just a ship. We have to be a team. We have to work together, think together, fight together." As the days passed, the crew grew closer. They became a unit, each person understanding their role in the battle to come. They learned how to defend the ship, how to strengthen its shields, and how to repair its systems if they were damaged in battle. They also learned how to operate the ship's engines, increasing its speed and maneuverability. But Lucas knew that they still had one major challenge ahead of them. The lure were not just a threat. They were an unstoppable force, and the ship, while powerful, was still recovering from centuries of dormancy. They needed to be ready, not just with weapons, but with strategy, with the ability to adapt and overcome the unimaginable. One night, as the crew gathered in the ship's main lounge, Lucas stood before them. He could see the fear in their eyes, but he could also see the determination. They were ready to fight. "We've trained," Lucas said, his voice steady. "We know how to fight, how to use the ship's weapons, but we also know that the lure are not a normal enemy. They won't fight like anything we've seen before. They will use every trick, every tactic, and we need to be prepared for that." The crew nodded in agreement. They understood the stakes. They understood the war that was coming. "We don't know when they will come," Lucas continued, "but we do know this. We can't let them destroy everything. We won't let them take this ship. We will fight, and we will win." There was a long silence as the crew took in his words, and then one by one they stood up, their faces filled with resolve. "We fight together," Adam said. "We fight for the ship," Sarah added. "We fight for the future," Lucas said, his voice filled with determination, and together they turned to face the unknown, ready for whatever the lure would throw at them.